I was never my father's favorite. Although he never said it directly, I always felt that something was wrong. I was his only biological son, but after he remarried, I suddenly found myself playing second fiddle. A stepfather. That's what I felt like in my own home. When my father brought his new wife into our home, I was still a teenager. The woman seemed to me to be cunning, too flattering, and I saw how quickly she entangled him in a web of flattery. Her son, Justin, came with her. From the very beginning, it became clear that he was more important to his father than me. He's such a smart guy. My father kept saying, he's so responsible. He will be a great leader. This was about a person who was a year younger than me, had never worked, was constantly on the phone, and was spending my mother's money. But Justin knew how to be nice and please his father. I couldn't, and our family business existed before I was born. My father built it from scratch. He always said he would pass it on to me one day. We are working for the future of the family, son. He used to say when I was a kid. And I really believed in it. I grew up with the idea that I would become a part of this business, invest my strength, and expand the business. That's why I started helping out at school. And at first I did small jobs, then more and more serious ones. I was living it, learning, trying new approaches, wanting to be useful. But the older Justin got, the more the situation changed. You have to teach Justin everything you know, my father once said. It was strange to me. He had never once said that I had to learn anything from Justin. It was always the other way around. It didn't seem to mean anything, but I could feel the wind shifting. I was always trying to prove to my father that I was worthy of this business. I wanted his recognition. That's why I worked harder than anyone else. And I missed meetings with friends, didn't have normal weekends. And when the moment came when my father could have said, "You did a great job," he said something else. "Justin has some good ideas. You should listen to him more." I gritted my teeth and continued to work. But more and more I noticed that it was not only my father who was making decisions, but also my stepmother. She was quietly pushing my father to think that her son was the best option for the company. He's more strategic, she said. He understands the modern market. It was ridiculous. Leon and Nana just didn't even understand how our main suppliers worked. But my father nodded, and I realized that my voice no longer carried weight. I did not notice how I gradually found myself in the shadows. I was pushed aside from important matters, not invited to meetings. When I asked my father directly what was going on, he looked away. "Son, I want you to think about other opportunities for yourself." And I felt something inside me break. My father had already made his decision. I left his office and realized that my place here was no longer guaranteed. I could fight, I could beg, but what for? I had already seen how it would end, and Justin got everything, and what about me? I was left with nothing. But while they were celebrating their victory, I was starting a new chapter in my life. When you spend your whole life working towards the same goal, and then in a second it's taken away from you, it's like being punched in the face. I tried to hold on when my father told me that Justin would inherit the company. There was no doubt in his voice, as if he had always known he would make this choice. And it was painful. "You are strong, son. You will find your way," he said. I clenched my jaw, holding back my emotions. How could he give up on his own so easily? But I received the real blow at the wrong moment. It was ahead of me. The next day, I walked into the office where I had worked for many years and saw Justin there. He was already sitting at the desk, proudly reclining in his father's chair. "Brooke, brother, don't worry," he said, not even looking at me. His tone. He didn't just take my place, he savored the victory. "Don't call me brother," I replied. I could barely contain my anger. All the years I'd invested in this company, all the effort I'd put into making it better, it was all down the drain. But I wasn't the type to be defeated by obstacles. "Let's see how you handle it," I said to him as a last word. I slammed the door and left. I didn't know what would happen next, but I decided that I wouldn't give them the satisfaction of seeing me broken. I thought the worst had already happened. But in the evening, my father called me for a conversation. Son, I wanted to talk about your future. He began. I sighed. It's too late to talk about it, I said. Don't be stubborn, Brooke. My father rubbed his temples as if I was driving him to a nervous breakdown. You have to realize that this choice is for all of us. I expected him at least say something like, I love you, you're important, but he didn't. Justin is a strategist. He continued, and you're more of a taskmaster. I couldn't believe my father was saying that. No, I'm just a task person. I looked at him and realized that there was a gap between us that could not be bridged. So what am I supposed to do now? I asked, trying to speak calmly. You have options, he replied. I could help you find another job. And then I felt a real blow. He wasn't just taking away what I thought was mine. He was also sending me away as if I had never had anything to do with the company. No thanks, I said dryly. I stood up, looked at him one last time, and walked out. I was left with nothing. No job, no family, without the future I had envisioned in my head. I didn't know what to do next, but I knew one thing for sure: I would show them what I was capable of. There are moments in life when everything falls apart in an instant. Yesterday you were standing on top, and today you are lying face down in the mud. I thought nothing would surprise me after my father gave the company to Justin. But the real collapse of the dream came a little later. I woke up the next morning with gloomy thoughts. Yesterday I was a director, and today, a former here, a man with nothing to do. I picked up my phone and opened the news. The first thing that caught my eye was an article about the new leadership of our company. A large photo of Justin, smiling and smug, was on the front page. The company is taking the company to the next level under the leadership of the talented Justin Gersq. Talented. He's not even capable of running a simple meeting without prompting. I threw my phone on the bed and went to make coffee. I wanted to think about the situation, to find a way out. But I didn't have time. The doorbell rang. I opened the door and saw our accountant, Mrs. Laurie, standing on the doorstep. She looked distraught. Brooke, I'm sorry to come unannounced, she began. What's going on? She bit her lip nervously. Justin had me review all the financial records, and your account was closed. I felt my mouth go dry. What? All payments have been stopped. Your share of the company. Well, you don't get it anymore. It's illegal. They found some kind of loophole. Brooke, I wanted to warn you not to count on that money. That I sat down on the doorstep. So, there's nothing left for me. She nodded. It was a disaster. I was still hoping that at least my share of the profits would allow me to get back on my feet, but no. Justin decided to destroy me completely. I sat down at my laptop and started checking my finances. I had enough money to last me a few months, but what next? I could sue, but it would take years. And it's not a given that I would win the case. I would have to start from scratch. I, Brooke Gersq, who had worked for the family business all my life, was now out of a job, out of money, and out of support. But I was not going to give up. I would not let them celebrate my downfall. I will find a way to come back, and then they will regret doing this to me. They say that betrayal is not the end of the world. They say that life goes on. But the question is, what kind of life will it be? And who are you after being betrayed? I stood in the middle of an empty apartment and looked at the things that had recently belonged to my wife. She was gone. Her perfume that filled the room was gone. There was no laugh that I heard every morning. There weren't even her photographs. I had put them all away. But for some reason, the feeling of betrayal remained. She had betrayed me with skill, without hesitation, without regret. I found out about it by accident when I checked our bank statement. A large amount of money went to pay for the hotel, and then another for an expensive gift. And it was definitely not for me. I didn't bother to ask. I just pretended I didn't know anything. But when I found romantic messages on her phone, I couldn't keep quiet any longer. "Who is he?" I asked her simply. She shrugged her shoulders. "Oh, no, you already know anyway." She didn't cry. She didn't beg for forgiveness. She just calmly packed her things and said, "We both realize that you are not the same person for me anymore." Just like that. And I stood there and listened to her explain that she was bored, that she wanted passion, new emotions, changes. "What about me?" I asked. And you?" She shrugged her shoulders. "You'll stay who you are." But now I really stayed the way I was. Alone in my apartment, alone in my life. The first days were terrible. I would wake up in the morning and catch myself thinking that I wanted to tell her something. And then I would remember that she was gone. I would get angry. At her, at myself, at this whole fucking life. And then a strange feeling came. I realized that for the first time in many years I could do anything. I didn't have to explain myself. I didn't have to coordinate plans. I didn't have to think about what she would say. I could live for myself. I decided to change. At first it was small things, new clothes, new hairstyle, new gym. Then it was new acquaintances. I started leaving the house, going to bars, meeting people. It was unusual at first. I almost forgot what it was like to be free. But then I felt like I was living again. And then one day in a bar I met her, a woman who didn't ask why I got divorced, wasn't interested in my past, but just laughed at my jokes and enjoyed the moment. I realized that life after betrayal does exist. And that maybe she even me a favor. But what will happen when she comes back? Because she will definitely come back. And that's when the fun begins. They say the best revenge is success. But when you're standing on the ruins of your life, it's hard to believe that everything will be okay someday. I was left alone. Without a business, without family support, without the future I had been building all my life. My father had made a choice not in my favor, and now I was a nobody. But you know what? That was just the beginning. After my father gave the family business to my stepmother's son, there was only one thing I could pack my things and leave. I had nothing. No start-up capital, no support. Just a desire to prove that I was worth something. I got a job. Yes, after years of management, I had to start from scratch. But I didn't give up. I worked during the day and thought about my plan at night. I only needed one chance. My first business started with a small idea. I realized that the service market was changing, that people needed something new. I took a chance and invested all my savings in a startup. It was a small project, but I put my heart and soul into it. The first months were terrible. No clients, no profit. I doubted myself. But then a miracle happened, one right contract, one call, and there it was, my first order. 2 years later, my business became profitable. I was no longer the guy who was kicked out of the family company. I became self-sufficient. And just as I was starting to live my life, they came back. The father and his new son had failed. Their business had collapsed. And now they were standing in front of me, asking for help. What did I say? That's another story. They considered me superfluous in the family business. They threw me away like trash. My father chose not me, but his wife's son, my half-brother. 8 years ago, I left with nothing. And now they are back. And you know what? They are in trouble. When I left the company, it was thriving. We had stable clients, a solid reputation, and most importantly, my vision for the future. But the father believed that his new son would do a better job. I watched from the sidelines. In the first years, the business relied on old contracts and connections that I helped build. They thought it would last forever. But times are changing. The competition was growing, the market demanded new solutions, and my brother was running the company as if it were his toy. He spent money, made bad decisions, but my father turned a blind eye. Problems were inevitable. The first financial holes appeared. They lost an important client. Then another one. But instead of changing the strategy, my stepbrother did the only thing he knew how to do. He went into debt. And everything still looked good on the outside, but those who knew the business could already see the cracks. And then there was information that they couldn't pay their employees' salaries. The family business was coming apart at the seams. Customers started to leave. Old partners lost their trust. But the worst thing was our reputation. Our name used to be a sign of reliability. And now people were laughing behind their backs. The harder they tried to keep the company going, the faster it sank into debt. One day I received an unexpected call. "We need to talk," my father said. I knew this day would come. And there they stood before me, my father and his favorite son. Emaciated, worried, for the first time in all these years they looked truly vulnerable. They came to ask for help. 8 years ago, I was forced out of the family business, leaving them with nothing. Now everything is falling apart, and they need someone to save the day. Isn't that ironic? I slowly set my coffee cup down on the table and looked at them. My father nervously crumpled his napkin in his hands, and my half-brother, the one who had been given the company instead of me, sat with a gloomy face, not looking up. For the first time in many years, I saw in my father's eyes not arrogance, but real fear. We made a mistake," he mumbled. I wonder what exactly made him admit the mistake. Was it the bankruptcy that was already on the horizon? No, I knew the company was in trouble. Lost contracts, debts, scandals. But hearing it from his lips was a special pleasure. We're in trouble," my brother finally spoke. His voice was trembling. "We've lost our biggest clients. And we have no money. The loans." He fell silent, catching his breath. My father picked up, "If we don't find a way out, the business will die. And with it, everything I had built for so many years." He looked up at me. "We need your help." I leaned back in my chair, crossing my arms over my chest. "Why me?" I asked calmly. My brother clenched his teeth, and my father looked away in confusion. You're the only one who can fix this," he finally answered. You have experience. You know how the market works." Now they realize it." I looked at my brother. "And what, you're just going to give up?" He pressed his lips together, clearly not wanting to answer. Hell stay." My father interjected. "You can work together." I looked at him and laughed. "Together? Are you serious? He betrayed me in the past. And now I'm supposed to be his lifeline again." I took a sip of coffee and slowly answered, "You have a lot of debts. More than you recognize. You have a bad reputation, missed opportunities." My father sighed heavily. "But you can change that." "Maybe," I nodded, "but do I want to?" They were silent. I got up and picked up my jacket. You left me no choice in the past. I won't leave it to you now." I took a step toward the door and then stopped and turned around. If I am coming back, it will be on my terms. 8 years ago, I was thrown out of my own home, out of the family business, out of the life that was supposed to be mine. Now they are coming back, and they want me to save them from disaster. But are they ready to pay for what they did? I looked at my father and brother. They were sitting at the table in my office, looking miserable. Tired, exhausted, fear in their eyes. "I have one condition," I said calmly. My brother clenched his teeth and my father tensed. "I'm listening," he replied. I slowly looked around the office. Everything here was earned by my hands without their help. I take full control. No compromises. No, let's consult. No exceptions. My brother looked up sharply. "You're joking, aren't you?" I smiled. "Do I look like I'm joking?" My father bowed his head, looking down at the table. It's radical," he muttered. "That's why it will work," I said. I could see my brother boiling with rage. For him, this meant a complete loss of power. "That's impossible," he said sharply. I raised an eyebrow. "Then get out, and you can forget about a second chance." I stood up and headed for the door. "Wait!" My father's voice stopped me. I turned around. He looked older than I remembered. His eyes had the same expression I had when he betrayed me. Are you sure you're not doing this out of revenge?" I smiled coldly. "And I'm doing this because you left me no choice." "Will they really agree?" Will my brother accept that he is no longer the boss in this game? Next morning, I showed up at the office of the company that had once been mine. The employees looked at me with curiosity. Some of the old staff were smiling, others were afraid. I went up to the top floor and opened the door to my father's former office. This was my place now. My brother stood in the corner, arms crossed. Do you really think you can save everything? I sat down in the chair and put my feet up on the table. No, I know I will. But the question is whether you will survive in this new reality. They thought I would be their savior. That I would forget all the grievances and help them, because I still had at least a drop of loyalty to my family. They were wrong. I will always have the last word. My father sat opposite me, his shoulders slumped and his hands nervously clutched the documents. We made mistakes. He began, not looking me in the eye. Mistakes. I smiled. Let's call a spade a spade. You threw me out of the company, out my life, out of my family, he sighed. Yes, we were cruel. But we want to fix it. I looked at my brother. He turned away, clenching his fists. He doesn't agree, does he? I asked him calmly. Doesn't matter, my father replied. I smiled wider. Oh, it is very important. My brother doesn't realize it yet, but his time is up. He has lost even if he hasn't realized it yet. I took out a printed contract from my pocket. You both sign it. My father took the sheet, ran his eyes over the lines. His hands trembled. Is this final? Yes, I answered. My brother snatched the papers, read them, and jumped to his feet. No, I will not allow it. I looked at him calmly. You don't decide anything. His face was filled with anger. You want to take everything away. Is this revenge? I leaned closer. It's justice. My father took a deep breath. We have no choice, he said in a low voice. My brother snapped. We do have a choice. We can either sign or lose everything. His father interrupted him coldly. He picked up a pen. I leaned back and watched. My father signed first. My brother was still hesitating, but when he saw my father's look, he signed as well. I took the documents and smiled. Congratulations. You officially no longer have anything to do with the company. My brother clenched his fists in anger. You will pay for this. I looked at him calmly. I had already paid 8 years of my life. Now it's your turn. Will they realize what they have done? Will they realize that I have always had the last word? Or is it too late? What do you do when your past has fallen apart and your future has no clear outline yet? You either drown in regret or create a new path. I chose the latter. Sitting in my office, I looked out the window. The city was living its own life. People were in a hurry, cars were honking, and the sun was flooding the streets with warmth. And I was finally breathing freely. The company was in my hands. My father and brother had nothing to do with it anymore. I could do whatever I wanted. And I was not going to repeat their mistakes. The past has taught me the main thing: power and money do not bring happiness. But they do give you the ability to control your life. And I won't let anyone else take this chance away from me. What are you up to? My lawyer asked me when I laid out the restructuring plan in front of him. A new policy. We will no longer work the way we did under my father. It's risky. He raised his eyebrows. And leaving everything as it was is even more dangerous. I wasn't going to save the business just to run it in the same style as before. I wanted to make it modern, flexible, and human, this my way. A few days after signing the documents, my father tried to call me. I didn't answer. He wrote messages. I did not read them. My brother also tried to get in touch, but I had no intention of listening to his hysteria. They made their choice years ago. Now it's my turn. What do they want? Do they not realize that I have closed this door for them? Or are they just scared? But a week later, my father did appear in my office. I did not look up from the documents. Have you come to sign something? I asked him coldly. He was silent for a long time, then exhaling, I made a mistake. I looked up. I wonder which one out of hundreds. I shouldn't have treated you the way I did. And only now have you realized it. He lowered his eyes. You should have been in charge of the company from the beginning." I smiled without any joy. "I thank you for your belated wisdom. I know apologizing won't change anything, but I want you to hear it." I looked at him for a few seconds. "I heard it. Now go." When he left, I felt strangely relieved. I hadn't forgiven. I hadn't forgotten. But I stopped waiting for forgiveness. Now my life belonged only to me. I didn't know what was ahead of me. But I was ready to find out. The story is not over. It is just beginning.